and welcome to Movie of the Year, the only podcast with the science and the screaming to determine what is the single greatest movie of any given year. My name is Kate, and I'll be your host tonight. We're discussing 1975's Night Moves. Our guests today are our PopFilter staples, Greg.
Hello,
Greg. Hi, Greg.
I'm a staple.
You are a staple. Mike.
Hello.
Another staple, and Ryan.
It's so crazy for Kate to introduce us individually, because usually it's these three schmucky turds, and then also we have...
Yeah, this time I thought about that, because I listened back to the last episode, and I thought, you know what? I should thank each of these people individually.
They're individuals sometimes.
They're individuals.
It is weird, though. When
nice.
you do it all three at the same time, we all scream yuck, yuck, and start poking each other in the eyes, so there is that.
It's very true. You guys are wearing little hats with helicopter wings on the top.
We wish.
I know. And finally, we have Evan of the They Were Good Friends podcast. Hi, Evan. Welcome to Movie of the Year.
Hi, hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, our absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Everyone, please, I'd love to know our overall opinions of this movie. Evan, let's start with you.
Oof.
Start with the new person first. That is harsh.
Oh, you're right. That's brutal. I take that back. Ryan, you come in and save the day.
You fucking do it.
Yeah.
That sound, though, was actually a pretty good response.
I kind of think, Kate, that's where we might all be at. And I think this is an awesome... This is why the being on the podcast rules, because hopefully in an hour we can be a little more confident than oof, but that's where we're at right now, I think.
Yeah.
So I did need to watch it twice. The first time, the movie was sort of surfaced to me and clunky to me in a lot of ways that 75 movies have been. And on second viewing, like so many things do, this movie opened the hell up, and now I think it's kind of phenomenal. Part of it on purpose, part of it not, maybe. I sort of want to go into that, but I think as a storytelling device and as sort of like here's what happens when you put a bunch of angry, drunk dudes in a room and tell them to make a movie, I think that's the movie's sort of giving on both those levels.
Incredible. The fact that you pivoted so strongly into an incredible film feels...
Deep love.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I'm a second date kind of guy.
Yeah, yes, you are. Greg, were you smitten at first glance with this movie?
Probably not at first glance. There's a lot that's sort of troubling about it, and I'm still not totally sure what the point is. A lot is placed out there, and unlike most movies, which would explain a ton of things, I feel like a lot is left not totally fleshed out. But at the very heart of the movie is just a kind of a weird story about a 16-year-old girl that seems to be being failed by everyone around her and hypersexualized, and then the movie kind of does that same thing, and it's just like such a weird sort of moment in the movie. Like the middle of the movie was sort of disconnected from the rest of it in a lot of ways, and trying to wrap my head around all of that is what has been causing me a lot of confusion. There's certainly a lot of artistry in it, and it was complicated and interesting, but I was left with so many questions that I hope the show will help me resolve.
Yes, I feel that more than I feel Ryan's love. I was a little thrown by this movie. Mike, what about you? Did you end up loving it, or are you confused?
Still chewing on it. I don't know if I'm confused. I will say I'm confused by I don't know if I've ever been so into a movie that does nothing. It is the least thrilling thriller, I think, is one of the old, like, of the time critiques of it. And
it's a back of the seat movie.
At no point was I like, what's going to happen next? But the whole time I'm like, all right, we're doing some weird vibes. We're going to keep on weird vibing today. And yeah, I think there's things that are unsettling. I think there's things that are supposed to be. And at the end I went, and that was a movie I watched. All right. So I think I'm still trying to parse it out, which means I'm going to love this episode because by the end you will all tell me how I'm supposed to feel.
Yes, exactly. Groupthink. Evan, I hope you have forgiven me for instinctually putting you on the spot first. Hopefully
But
you
Kate's a
have
bully.
had enough time. Yeah. What about you? Where are you landing on the spectrum of Night Moves fandom?
There are definitely there are aspects of this movie that I loved and I thought were like really fascinating, especially having to do with like the main character and his struggle. I'm sure we're going to talk about that later. I thought like that particular element of the story was like super interesting, but then it was just kind of like that part of the story that I found fascinating was like covered by other stuff that kept happening. Like I really didn't think the storyline with him and his like wife needed to be there. Kinda.
Yeah.
I mean, it does offer, I think, like an extra layer of like tension and turmoil, especially for the main character. But looking back on it now, I think that time could have been spent elsewhere, I think, in the script. Like,
Yeah.
I think there was just like too many things and ideas happening that the screenplay writer was like, oh man, I want to do this and I want to put this in there and
There's a lot of shit in this movie.
A lot.
Or it's like
Yeah.
the screenwriter was like, all right, I just wrote Night Moves 1 through 3. And the studio was like, oh, we're only making 1. And he was like, shit. And then jammed them all together.
Yeah, he's like, I got a piece of each. Do what you will.
Yeah, each character feels like they have their own B plot, and there's like an interconnectivity that I find very overwhelming. I also had to watch it twice, and I don't know if I understand it more the second time. It felt like a completely different movie. I was focusing on different things, and the narrative wasn't easier to find, but it was a different one was offered, which I thought was interesting. Go ahead, Mike.
I was gonna say, I think that's one of the positives is that you say every character has a B plot. Like this movie could have been Night Moves starring Deli's mother, and it's just Sunset Boulevard riff, or Night Moves starring young James Woods, and it's just about what it's like to be this shitty young mechanic in stunt Hollywood. Like they each do have a history. It feels very like a lived-in world, and the characters often are annoyed with each other because they're like, I got my own shit to do, Harry. I don't know what you're doing. I have my movie I'm starring in. What are you doing here?
But like, in like a
I
lot,
like that a lot.
in a lot of good mysteries like this, and this happens a lot on TV too, is like what Mike's saying is because they all have their own lives, they're all their own hero.
Yeah.
There's a major communication issue in this movie, and that is sort of how you do mysteries and plots, but it's also how you are completely isolated in your life. It's how you live totally alone, and all of these people actually do. If one just stepped up and said, I'm feeling this right now, 30 minutes of the movie would have been gone if any one character had done that. But that's not how Los Angeles works. You know, that's not how the world works. Harry straight up says it to Deli. Like, she's like, being 16 is hard. And he's like, being 40 is hard, girl. Like, this is all really terrible. And I think that's where that feel that Mike is describing comes from.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that we have a long way to go till we actually have an opinion about this movie. But let's take a quick break, and when we're back, we're going to dive into questions of genre.
Hey, guys, thank you so much for listening so far. And let me just tell you that everything ahead of this commercial is much better than what came before it. That's my guarantee. While I have you here, let me tell you about a website. It's called yourpopfilter.com, and it's everything you need that's related to PopFilter. Everything Mike, everything Ryan, everything Greg, everything Cassie, everything is there at yourpopfilter.com. While you're there, go to yourpopfilter.com/Amazon. Make that your new Amazon bookmark and do your shopping from there. That way, we get a little piece of the action, and Amazon doesn't. Make sure you're also listening to everything that PopFilter has to offer, which includes the Superhero Show, a podcast that covers every single TV show that's based on a comic book or comic book property, and Movie of the Year, where we sit down and try and figure out what is the single greatest movie of any given year. That's Superhero Show, that's Movie of the Year, and that's yourpopfilter.com. Rate, subscribe, review. Bye.
Arthur Penn's 1975 American neo-noir film Night Moves tells the story of private detective and former football player Harry Moseby, played by the inimitable Gene Hackman, Harry, the PI, takes on what seems like a run-of-the-mill missing person case as a former Hollywood B-actress tasks Moseby to find and return her 16-year-old daughter, played by Melanie Griffith. But when Harry tracks her down to Florida, he begins to see a connection between the runaway girl, the world of Hollywood stuntmen, and a suspicious mechanic when an unsolved murder comes to light. At the time of Night Move's release, Roger Ebert gave the film a full 4 stars and called it one of the best psychological thrillers in a long time. Taste buds, I ask you this. What sort of movie is Night Moves? Suspense, a detective movie, or revisionist noir? And how
it's
does
not
Harry's...
a psychological... Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah. Evan, jump in. I love that.
Sorry, it's not a psychological thriller, I'll tell you that right now.
No.
Please. Yeah, I mean... You're contesting Roger Ebert.
Roger Ebert. I mean,
Yeah, watch out.
I am.
You be
I
careful.
do dare to contest.
Please, I cannot wait to what do you in your mind? What is a psychological thriller, and why is this not one of them?
I feel a psychological thriller. It has to get in your mind more and it's more cerebral. Like I think.
This feels like a psychological examination. Like it's looking at what Harry Moseby is going through as a man approaching the incredibly old age of 40.
Ew, who's even 40? That's disgusting.
But it's like it examines the psychology of that, but it doesn't feel... I agree that it doesn't exactly feel like a thriller. It moves kind of too slowly to actually be much of a thriller. It seems like things just sort of occur to him, and there's like almost a glacial pace at which this narrative moves forward.
I also think that's just isn't that like a thing of like movies, of like old movies, just like the pace being a lot slower in general?
But I think that there's a lot of stuff going on of like, this is purposefully slow. And usually when we say that, that's like, oh, okay, so it's artsy fartsy. But this is a little bit different, I think, in that moviegoers really misunderstand what it's like to work a case. And when you're working a case, it's in a movie, like in an episode of CSI, it's very easy to do. You know, like every clue pops up, you throw it in the computer's like, oh, here's the bad guy, then you go get them.
Yeah, you recognize like a B actor who shows up in a lot of sitcoms. You're like, I bet it was him.
Like B actor, like Jerry Seinfeld?
Yeah.
Yes, the actor.
But this is like, no, it's actually, there's a lot that's boring to it. There's a lot that like, was it going to blow up in your face? There's a lot that's going to be sad, you know, because you're a loser, and like really hitting that. If you're a PI, you're a loser really hard.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this whole case hinges on something incredibly unlikely, which is that she wants to go swimming, and so they take her to the very spot where that dead body is. Like if they don't take her to go skinny dipping there for some reason, this like supervised skinny dipping, then she never finds that body. She never recognizes him, and nothing can move forward from that point.
I don't know a noir, neo or otherwise, that doesn't have that. There at some point, I don't know if it's always the inciting incident, but at some point there's a thing where like, well, that's bananas. Like that just feels so built into the genre. So I never went, what? I was like, yeah, sure, that's got to happen at some point.
Plus, I mean, Deli said we should go swimming in the dark.
Yeah,
I have to work on my night moves.
Yes.
And then ominous music played
for 20 minutes. Why did it play for so long?
It was a jam band kind of era in 1975.
Okay, I think that ultimately the answer to your question is revisionist. I think that this movie is The Long Goodbye as written by Shane Black, the guy who wrote
The Nice Guys,
Last Boy Scout, and The Nice Guys.
Yeah.
These movies that seem fratty, you know, but like ultimately do come down on the side of misogyny, like when you really look at it. And I think with Shane Black and with the case of this movie, it's a little accidental, and it's a little like, no, this is just what the genre is like, so we get a free pass.
Right.
And the other part is like, well, you also pushed it far. And I think the revisionist part is that our main character, and this, I don't think this has ever been done before, not in The Long Goodbye, really, not in Chinatown before this, but this guy sucks ass at his job. This guy is a moron. And we don't know that until the very end, because we're living in Harry's world where he is the hero. Everyone is a hero of their own story, but the hero at least should be the hero of our story, right? And he's not like, you know, he's a fairly nice guy, but he cannot see what's in front of him, and unfortunately he's our eyes. And so we think, because of like filmic language, because of we've been trained, we're like, well, everything that Harry does has to be on the right path because that's how movies work, and it just isn't true. And that's where the revisionist part comes in.
Yeah, so how would you say would you say that's Harry's personal subplot kind of changing the entire genre from something that's specifically like a PI noir to something that's commenting on those tropes?
Yeah, I mean, commenting in the way that, like, it's not as easy as we think. But the revisionist thing, the thing I really like about it is whatever you thought about this genre before, here's what it actually would be like, you know? And these action heroes aren't perfect. And, you know, the villains aren't always wearing a black hat. And the good guys aren't always good, you know? Like, they're all real humans. And so we just don't expect that from Harry. And that's, I saw the movie twice. I do not understand the case. I do not understand why the director was in the plane.
Well, no, because you're bringing statues from somewhere, then you have to hide them underwater, obviously, and then you pull in people from California to Florida because it's all very clear. What you need to know about smuggling statues, yeah, it's bananas. I don't know if it's supposed to make sense.
And the reason it's not clear is because that director was under his nose the entire time. That's the part we're supposed to notice. Because that guy did not fit into Harry's belief on how a case should go down, then he didn't even see it. He just looked for the femme fatales. He looked to find the sluttiest woman or the druggiest drug dealer. Like, he painted on Jimmy Woods immediately, and you should. That person is a sleazebag, but the director didn't fit his narrative, and so he just moved on.
I think it's a 1975 40-year-old white man's young Goodman Brown. Like, he finds out that everyone around him basically is involved in this conspiracy, and they're all guilty. And it's because it's this 1975 thing of we're adrift. We don't know what's right. We don't know who to believe or what to believe in. He wants to believe in his traditional masculine view of the world, but ultimately it leaves him like completely alone and literally going nowhere in a boat in the open water.
He thought that because he was an athlete, he could keep his wife forever. And instead, she cheated on him with a guy with a cane.
Ew.
I mean, like...
Not even another athlete?
He thought that he was like everything that a man is supposed to be, and she goes out with somebody who has a limp.
But
you got to talk to your wife.
Why?
Like, you just...
boring.
That's a part
no,
of it.
Never.
You got to, like, see what's up with her.
I think I want to push back a little, and part of what I'd say makes it the neo-noir is because I think 25-year-old Harry would be uber masculine. 40-year-old Harry, the way he's
a football player.
The way
right? 25-year-old.
Yeah,
Harry
he's still, so he's like, ugh. 40-year-old Harry is like, he still has those tendencies. He's still built like Gene Hackman, so he's a big bull of a dude. But like, he doesn't go in fists a swinging when he finds out his wife's cheating. He does, like, I think he is, even before this case, he's like, I've been living my life wrong. He's already on the downhill. I'm tired.
But the way he's living
poorly.
it wrong is he's over analyzing it, and the whole way he approaches his wife cheating on him is totally wrong, because rather than engage with it as the emotional, like, sally that it is, like the emotional move it is from his wife, he instead completely abandons that and just views it as, how can I analyze this? How can I, like, solve this like it's a case?
But he has no idea. I mean, that's ultimately the problem, is that nothing is solvable, and he thinks everything should be. And that's kind of like a typical dude problem. But the other thing is that he has no idea how to be complicated. He knows that he shouldn't be complicated because he's a man, and they're not, and they solve things with their fists and with booze. But he is complicated. But he's like he doesn't know how to be. And so it just he just bumbles around LA like a moron.
I don't know how to be emo, okay? But I'm feeling stuff.
He tries to get that weird permafro over his eye, but it just doesn't work.
See, that was actually my favorite part of the movie, was his whole deal of, like, trying to be something that he thought he should be, or trying to, like, make something work that wasn't working. And that's what I wish the movie had kind of, like, made more of, like, a big deal of, if that makes sense, or, like, kind of centered its whole thing around that theme.
Yeah, it's kind of like the movie examines that idea through the lens of the crime rather than just observing the character through the lens of his problems with his wife or his problems, like, deciding what kind of man he wants to be.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is some stuff though, like the wife wants him to go work at this high-tech detective agency, which probably means working with robots, and you should take that job. But he's like, absolutely not. And what she's saying is you should go to the place with the budget that has the equipment that will help you solve the crimes.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, no, I'd rather work by myself and simply not solve crimes.
I want to go to different guys I know.
Manlier.
I'm going to go from different guys I know from my past and say, hey, that's what detective work is. Is anybody I know from 20 years ago who can help me out?
If you're not going to sit there and tell me about that interception I had that one time, then I don't want to interview you for the case.
Let's put a pause on this really quickly, because I think we're veering into conversations around the women folk inside of this piece. And boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to discuss when it comes to that topic. So let's take a quick break. And when we're back, we're talking ladies.
Hola, Filterinos. I just wanted to interrupt real briefly and say thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. If you want to support us a little more directly, you can go to patreon.com/yourpopfilter. There, depending on what tier you pick, $1 a month, $5 a month. If you're crazy, anything more than $5 a month, don't do that. You can get extra content. There's extra shows, extra series, behind-the-scenes stuff. You could pay for Ryan to draw you a picture. I can write you a poem. You can get the shirts off our very own backs. All of that and so much more over at patreon.com/yourpopfilter. While you're on the internet, you should check out Shady Monk. He does all the tunes you've been listening to. He's on Bandcamp. He's on Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever kids get their music these days that I'm too old to know. Shady Monk lives there. You can probably follow him on Twitter and Instagram as well. That's Shady Monk. Wherever you get music, check him out.
So women don't come off super great in this movie. From the shitty mom to her slutty daughter to a cheating wife to the ex-hooker, ex-stripper girlfriend, what, if anything, does Night Moves have to say about women, sex, love, and is it enough to keep your nipples erect for 30 minutes? Mike, let's throw it to you.
If your nipples are erect for 30 minutes, see a doctor. Or Brad
Dr.
Dukakis,
Love.
or whatever that kid's name was.
What if it's just one?
one nipple?
But you push it down and then the other one pops up?
Yeah.
Like Bugs Bunny's?
Then you just take a hammer. I think it's interesting because, like, I think gonna blend the genre talk and the gender talk, if that's okay with you, host Kate.
Yes, please.
In noir, it was like you got the femme fatale, you got the virgin and the whore, right? You're playing with those, and this one dares to ask, what if they're all whores? I'm not saying I agree, but that is interesting. Especially when the introduction of Deli is so, like, we hear about her for so much of the movie before we meet her. And so you think it's going to be like in 13, Rachel Evan Wood is very, like, she does the makeup and you're like this teenager who's trying to, like, seduce men by looking older. And, like, that's often that kind of girl. And Deli is a kid-ass kid. I was like, this little girl who, like, just needs a hug and a sandwich is who you've all been talking about disgustingly this whole movie. And also doesn't hold herself like she's trying to seduce the world. She's just, like, kicking her little legs out. Is like, I'm a kid. What's going on?
Or, I mean, like, yeah. She there's some stuff where, like, she gets jealous of, is it Paula? When Paula and Harry are talking. Oh, yeah. And so she's in the bathroom. She's like, well, let me use your shower. Like, you can see she gets jealous. But there's, as far as, like, being a seductress.
No.
Like, at one point, Tom's like, I messed up. She got to me. Motherfucker, like, she did barely anything. That was all you, bro.
This is the best line in the whole movie is there ought to be a law, and Harry very deadpan goes, there is.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that was. I was like, okay, I'll give you. This movie gets snaps from me for that.
Yeah.
And that's how it kind of posits Harry is a good guy. Is every other adult man from guys a few years older than her to guys 30 years older than her are like, look at that sex pot. And he instantly is like, what are you all talking about? Which was a nice change, because I do think another movie would have been like, Gene Hackman would have been like, I get it.
Yes.
No, he treats her like a child, right?
Yeah.
Like, when she yells out in the night, he goes and he pats her back and, like, helps her get back to sleep. He, like, recognizes that she's a child, and he is not, like, he's not even flustered by her, like, saying that she wants to take a shower, because she's just a kid, so it doesn't get to him, because that's the world of, like, what adult people are supposed to be like.
And that's especially important too, because we are talking about a guy who does get flustered by adult women. Like,
oh yeah,
yes.
for sure.
This guy is really only intimidated by women. Like you could be a thug, a heavy, a bad guy, or whatever. But when a girl walks into the room, he starts stammering and he doesn't know how to stand, and he really doesn't have a way to connect with women at all. And so the movie doesn't either. I don't know if that's on purpose or not, but if the movie is Harry, like the movie just doesn't know like the right ways that they're supposed to be presented in a room, and I think that's so much because Harry just becomes a stammering idiot.
Yeah, masculinity.
But
in other words,
does the movie construct a feminine ideal? If anything, it's like Delhi in a non-corrupted state, like Delhi not as beset by a bunch of older men who only want one thing from her, but like the wife isn't really held up as a paragon of virtue. The Delhi's mom
isn't
is
it Paula?
Like the worst. Yeah, Paula seems pretty dope, except for the whole being part of the crimes. But
crime's
she's
fine. Who
smart.
cares?
She's smart. She's savvy. Like she
I would
sees
say
the
there's
world realistically.
There's a big difference in smuggling things from the Yucatan, which is like that's what you just got to do in every movie, to statutory rape. Those are
Yeah.
as far as we're supposed to think of this movie, and the way that both she and Harry gloss over her past, where every woman's past in this movie will haunt them forever, and every dude's past they just get to move past. For Paula, it's like I graduated, I was a teacher, I was a stripper, I was a hooker, now I'm here, and her and Harry don't miss a beat. They just keep rolling. There's no judgment there like there is with every other woman in this movie.
Yeah, I think that's why Paula was definitely my favorite character, personally. I don't know, just as soon as I saw her, like, feeding those dolphins.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wearing that beanie.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness.
I laughed so hard when she's like, "You thought I was bald, didn't you?" And he was like, "Yes."
And she's the only one that can keep up with Harry in like the quips too.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
But I love that introduction to Paula, which sets her ethics and morals immediately of look at how good I am with animals. And then Harry's like, why? He's like, oh, I sell them to rich people. They keep them in their pools. Like, okay, so you don't actually care then.
Those dolphins help solve the crime. They don't like hang a lantern on it, but basically he like walks over and the dolphins are like, check it out, there's a dead body later.
Oh, see, I thought they were the worst. I thought they helped kill James Woods and were trying to eat his body, but they're slower than pigs are.
Assassin dolphins.
Not since
They're
Not since
very
Ace Ventura:
smart.
Pet Detective have dolphins been so integral to a psychological
Now
thriller.
that's
This
a
reminded me a
detective
lot
movie.
about Ace Ventura.
That's a detective movie, if I've ever seen one.
It's crazy how the beanie becomes iconic in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, because this beanie out-beanies that, her dolphin worker getup.
How you instantly know she's a dolphin worker?
Yeah.
From that beanie.
Well, you're like, man, this is someone who works on the seas. You can tell
Yeah.
by her cool hat.
I just thought it was part of like to get to know the dolphins. She would make her head look like the dolphin's
Look,
head.
I'm
Is that
like
not
you.
true?
I'm bald and weird.
The one thing I could not quite figure out throughout the course of the movie was how involved was she in all this stuff? I guess we'll never ultimately know, but because it was the whole movie, I think, sort of walks this knife's edge between, is she a criminal or is she caught up in this conspiracy? And it's got that Patty Hearst energy of like, are you guilty or are you trapped by this situation?
Also, did Deli boot her out of bed?
Ew,
know,
I hope not.
Was
I
she
hope
Tom's? Was she Tom's?
You know, I honestly think that maybe she didn't have anything to do with her stepdad at all, but he realized that. I think the reason he started acting like that, because he starts acting like that suddenly, and I think it's because he realizes, oh shit, this guy's going to figure out that we killed that dude and dumped his body in the water. So I'm going to act like the thing I'm really worried about is that I'm going to get pinned for doing something with my stepdad. I don't think he really did, because he suddenly switches gears. You have to remember how clever he is, because from the time Gene Hackman shows up, he's like, shit, I committed a crime, and this guy's going to want to try to, like, I don't want this guy around asking questions, even though he's clearly not doing a great job of it.
So I'll send him on
I
a
think-
boat in the middle of the night to where the fucking plane is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if you saw fat Jimmy Buffett in the Florida Keys, are you going to assume he's a murder mastermind? No, you're going to be like, this guy parties, and that's all right.
But it would be really easy for him to make you believe that he was creepy with his stepdaughter.
Yeah.
And so he goes for that. That's not the first thing you want to do, but I think he goes for that as a way just to throw him off the scent.
Crazy. Look at this. We're learning.
Yes. And I mean, okay, so how do we, with this new interpretation that Greg, honestly, I had not even considered that perspective. Yeah. Or do we feel like we're getting closer to an actual opinion about the movie?
I do think that, yeah, I mean, I do think that helps with the whole, we believe Harry's eyes, we believe Harry's clue finding, because then you throw that in with Paula, who I think is a criminal, or doesn't, she doesn't mind stealing a thing or two, right? And the way that is added in at the end of the movie, it's like, oh, by the way, we were stealing stuff. No big deal. And then she goes down to get it. She puts it on a raft. And what pops up but like the biggest Maltese falcon you have ever seen, which was also going on under your nose the entire time, Harry. You had an actual Sam Spade case to solve, these missing things, which is every goddamn detective's dream, and you didn't even know about that part either. Damn it.
Yeah, I think she's definitely a detective, but that makes, if the plot hole is why would they float near where the body was, it does seem Paula has a conscience, because she pretty quickly is like, wait, Tom's going too far, and goes with Harry because he no longer has the gun, and she's like, let's just go. I do think most of me thought she took them there on purpose.
To so that it would be
She's
revealed.
like, this is too much, man. I wanted to train dolphins to live in people's pools. This is crazy now.
And there's 3 murders after that, so she would definitely be right about that. Part of what I like about the movie is that a lot of this stuff is not I don't know if that there's an answer for a lot of this stuff, and I think that's what makes the movie kind of compelling, is that you have to decide on what you think reality might be. The movie won't hold your hand and say, no, this is exactly what happened, don't worry about it.
And James Woods to be innocent means we have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, because look at that face.
Look at him.
That is guilt. Going back to this movie won't hold your hand, going back to gender, because earlier, Greg, you said there's no paragon of virtue of woman. There's none of men, too. I think that's kind of the point. It's like, we all have shades of dirtbag.
Oh, I kind of disagree with that. I think that Harry Moseby is supposed to be kind of like a perfect man out of the time of perfect men, so that there's no place anymore.
No, he's a fuck up and a dummy.
For the paragons of masculinity.
I also think for 75 for infidel, Harry kind of takes his wife to task, but I think movies normally take infidelity of a woman way harder on the woman than this one. That's
a 70s thing too, though.
Free love, baby.
The 70s got really weird about marriage as an institution, but people would. I think this is what it was. I think people still married way too young, and then their answer to that was not to marry way too young, but to marry way too young and then just to fuck around. But if you read the books of the 70s and stuff, open marriages and dalliances, nobody knew how to do it in a way that was ethical. But I think that people were stepping out on each other all the time.
The way that they do it is hey, I was thinking about having an open relationship, and the other person's like, okay, and then the other person's like, you said it, okay, bye. I'm gonna go do whatever I want.
Starting 5 years ago.
Yeah. You said okay now, so that means everything I've done is totally cool.
I think that this conversation kind of has a lot to do with where we think, or the answer to these questions kind of comes from where we think Arthur Penn's coming from. How in control he is, what he's trying to comment on. So let's take a quick break, and when we're back, let's dive into Penn's style.
Well, that is very, very funny, or very sad, and perhaps now you have something to think about, or very problematic, and perhaps we have something to think about. But in any event, I'm sure you have some reaction to what you're listening to. So why not check us out on the social media? You can go to Instagram or Twitter and find us at Your Pop Filter. Email contacts at Your Pop Filter. Hey, everybody, keep watching them
To the
movies.
common man, much of Night Moves, including its horrible Ryan-level pun of a title, comes off as deeply corny. Does the movie have a certain stylized feel, particularly when it comes to editing? What is director Penn trying to do here? What does it say about cinema in 1975? Ryan, how are you feeling about Night Moves? I know in general you feel like it seems like you understand this piece a little bit better than maybe the rest of us.
I actually did look this up.
Oh, you did?
I wanted to know what Arthur Penn was thinking. And honestly, his past movies is sort of what filled me in on this movie. I can't remember if I already talked about this, but if you look at his stable of movies, his
Bonnie and
Penn,
Clyde, right?
if you will. Yeah, that's sort of what helped me break down who Harry is, because he basically just to totally destroy what we thought of as a male gangster and as a male Western star in Bonnie and Clyde and Little Big Man. And so that's clearly what he's doing here. But the thing I looked up was the editing, because it's, especially in like the first third, it's crazy. It's almost bad, and the overlapping is, I guess, Altman-esque, because we love throwing out that word. And this is where the psychological, not thriller, but I think examination that Greg said comes in, is he wanted to give us little keys that we were being dropped into Harry's mind and not as a character in Harry's life. But now we're him now. I mean, the boat at the end is the point of view. And so some of the things he does are a little more obvious than others, but the disjointed sort of smash cuts and the overlapping dialogue was supposed to get us there. To me, it came off as disorienting in a negative way, but then when you hear that it was on purpose, I guess you like it more? I don't know.
I think things can be on purpose and not super well. Yeah, it did read like, because he's been directing forever at this point. He is not new Hollywood. It does feel like, the kids are doing these tricks, because Bonnie and Clyde doesn't have that like, overlapping dialogue.
Bonnie and Clyde is the official start of New Hollywood.
He's just older than them, and I'm ageist. But it does feel like that part of it felt like, well, the kids are doing this, and I guess I'll fucking do that too. Is this what you want? And it didn't. Knowing he did it on purpose didn't make me go, good move, man. Now it works.
I think we just watched a John Huston movie, though, who was also from Arthur Penn's time. And we talked a lot about how he was not able to adapt
Penn does
to New
better,
Hollywood.
for
He was
sure.
not able to deconstruct these manly men. He sort of fell in love. Like, he couldn't get away from how awesome it is to be a dashing, handsome white male. You know, and
I
think
it rules.
I mean, we're not allowed to
not
say it,
bad.
but
But it's also
life's pretty easy.
It's not as good as it used to be.
Yeah.
You used to come with like a lot of extra stuff.
I think Penn does an incredible job in his trilogy, and this is the least known and probably the least good of the trilogy.
I'm sorry, Greg, did you interrupt?
Yeah, I derailed
Ryan?
the whole podcast just to make a Penn and
Oh,
Teller
I
joke.
thought you were just doing an example of
And
dialogue
it landed.
overlapping.
Yes, Altman-esque.
But, I thought it was kind of one of the ways in which he sneaks up on you. Is you spend a lot of this movie being like, what's your deal, man? What are we doing here? What's the point of all this? Like, where are we going with this? I'm not totally comfortable. And I think the sort of weird direction is how he helps achieve that. It gets a little bit tauter near the end, and it becomes more suddenly like this movie just in the last, I would say, 20 minutes does become a thriller briefly. But it shifts into that right at the end rather than always being that way from the beginning.
Especially
So
the
I think
whole turn around. There's a plane coming.
It's going like, brrr. Like, I mean, and you got scuba gear. You could just dip down.
I know. Could she really not hear?
I'm guessing, Ryan, is it so dumb to even say this, but that was just like he wanted to do his own North by Northwest, and so...
Oh,
I mean,
just his
you got those
version of
vibes
it.
too? So did I.
Yeah, right? Because plane chasing down a character in the foreground.
The first time we meet the director with the broken arm, the movie that they're filming is it's South by Southwest or something. Like, it looks exactly like it, And so, or like maybe one of those
Because I got Bonnie and
asylum
Clyde
knockoffs.
vibes from that one. I
Yeah.
almost felt like he was kind of making, like he was almost acting like that was Bonnie and Clyde.
And Bonnie and Clyde does have crazy editing in parts. I feel like Night Moves does it when there's nothing going on, and Bonnie and Clyde does it when there's a ton going on. And so that's the major difference.
So when we think about all of this, I can't escape the fact that this movie is called Night Moves. Yeah, I find it very distracting in terms
Pretty
of
upsetting,
and
actually.
pretty upsetting. I mean, obviously, it seems to be a play on night moves, as in like a chess knight,
But spelled different.
and we need to respect and acknowledge that. Does the film use things like chess?
It does
Do
in
they
a
make
couple
effective?
scenes.
Yeah. Do we think it's an effective metaphor, or is it corny? Do we think that he succeeded in what he was trying to do with it?
If he was trying to do something with it, I didn't pick up on it personally. I mean, we see him play chess once in his car, and I was like, "What are you doing? No one does that." And
I think it's less.
You're being a nerd right now.
I think
Harry?
it's less the chess and more his attitude towards it. Because if you think of what he says in that scene where he talks about the Knight moves, he's like, all the moves were there, and he didn't know what to do. So when you watch this movie again, thinking of him saying that about the last three moves of this chess match, and you realize how often he's standing there and someone is being so obvious about what's going on, and he just doesn't see it. Mm-hmm. Specifically, the scene where Melanie Griffith, where Deli is so upset, and the Tom and Penny are acting, or Paula are acting so weird, and he doesn't see what's going on there.
The fucking time where his head accidentally hits the answering machine. And Deli's like, oh, by the way, I was going to call
Here's
you because
the actual
killer is...
I don't have time to listen to that. I think it's...
So knowing that he's like caught up in the what could have been, I think is even more important.
It's that, and then the other thing he says about another time he's playing chess is, I think it's his wife who says, who's winning? And he says, nobody, one side's just losing slower than the other. Also lets you know the attitude of the movie itself. Cold War.
But then that's also why you cheat as a wife. Like, if the camera was on her, she would have heard him say that. Be like, okay, you're a detective. I get it. Way to have a good line.
I almost wondered if there's an interpretation of this movie where it's like the women are just too sexed up and the guys aren't as interested in sex, and so they're like running around. Like, his wife is cheating on him. Deli is over-sexualized. The problem with Deli's mom seems to be that like she was over-sexualized. I almost wondered if that was like supposed to be an angle, like that this was the sort of the dark aftermath of the sexual revolution.
Well, what's interesting is because like so many, obviously throughout Hollywood, women have been underused, but the camera doesn't linger. Even the Deli's mom is flaunting it out there in her bathing suits, and the camera nor Harry is checking it out. Even when Deli strips, the camera's not like, see? Like, it's just... Yeah,
it's not a Michael Bay movie.
They didn't give us any close-ups, which I was like, okay, at least
okay.
do that.
I didn't know which way you were going to go,
when
Evan. I thought you were like, they didn't give us a close-up, which pissed me off.
Except when she's framed in the window at the bottom of the ship.
But that I think that was mostly for the reveal of like, and here's it. Look, you're distracted by a little butt, and here's a dead body.
Also, almost like it's a movie about movies, where a lot of movies will do this with screens, like TV screens or computer screens. This one did it with windows, in that all of the windows were obstructed by something where it was like that weird like 70s, like it looks like prism-y. That's how all of the windows looked. Or when Harry and Paula were finally relating, there was like 3 things that he had to pull up on the window in order to like actually hear each other, because that's how they do their communication. Is I just need a little bit of something between us, because if there's not, that's too weird, that's too real. So we're not going to actually see things until it's through the glass bottom boat. And then look at how when Harry solves the case, it cuts to him looking at the bottom of that boat 9 or 10 times as the guy sinks to the bottom of the ocean.
Honestly, I think that was one of my favorite shots, actually.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
And yeah, instead of just like going right to credits once you figure out who's in the plane, we just have to sit there and watch both of them react. We have to watch this guy see his friend drown, and then the friend, the director, just be like, no, it's me. Please help me. Could you please help me get out of here?
Sorry about before where I shot at you. That was
I know. That
nuts.
That could happen to anybody.
I'm so angry right now.
I don't know if we have landed on an opinion yet again, but I do know that I'm ready to start handing out some awards. How are people feeling about that?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I love it.
Love it. Let's take a quick break, and when we're back, it's award season. And it's now time for a couple awards. Welcome back, guys. We're going to start with cringiest moment. Ryan, you offer some big cringes. You're an expert. Tell us.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, tell us what's the cringiest moment?
I think that we talk about Draper theory a lot on this show, and Draper theory is I'm going to make sure that we make sure everybody knows Don Draper is not a racist in the first episode, so then we can do whatever we want with him in the rest of the series. And I sort of see Paula as that a little bit, like we want to make sure that Moseby is not, he's a good guy all around, right? And everybody likes him. And when Deli's in the room, he goes for Paula over and over again, like, because that's just the kind of guy Harry is. And I think the one big breakdown for Harry, and it may be because it's a 1975 movie, or it may be because this is like Harry really breaking down, and so the real him comes out, and he's not such a nice guy. But the scene that stood out is when he calls Nancy's friend Charles out. Charles takes Nancy to the movies, and then as like this beard boyfriend, and then passes her over to the guy with the cane, and then starts throwing out slurs that he just doesn't do in the rest of the movie with anything. And so there was no other.
He says, "When are we going to go bowling again?"
Yeah,
I guess got him. I guess.
I thought they just had a nice time bowling one time. I think I misread that scene.
Oh no, it's not that. It's when they're in the kitchen and he's screaming, why did you let that person take you to the movies, or you're using this person as a beard? And so he throws some slurs out there. Bowling, I don't think is a slur, but in that kitchen scene, he goes off and I think he works really hard to not be a dickbag, like literally all of the other dudes that he knows, and then he messes it up in this one scene.
Yeah, men offer the largest cringes in that the kind of sort of the ultimate cringe. Greg, what about you?
I do think he's shitty to that guy when he asks him if he wants to go bowling, because his response right away is like, "Oh, you think that's pretty cute, don't you?" And I think that there might be a less generous way of looking at this movie that draws a connection between its views of homosexuality and its views of just like having sex with underage women. But that's not what I'm going to go with my cringe for. My cringe is going to be at the heart of this movie is the exploitation of this character, Deli. Yes. And then we see her naked a whole bunch. She's naked for a long time in this movie. And to accommodate that, they had to wait until Melanie Griffith turned 18. You're obviously being creepy if you have to shoot most of the movie and then wait until she turns 18 and then come back.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And get her naked.
Yeah. They started filming this 2 months after her 16th birthday. And then they did pick up shots of her naked when she turned 18.
And then you just splice them in. And then, so oftentimes there's these movies that are about, women being sexually exploited. And then at the very heart of the artifact of the movie itself, there's the sexual exploitation that it seems to be criticizing. And so this sort of weird thing where you take her body when she's 18 and then you splice it into things that she did when she was 16. Guys, that's creepy. That's a creepy, cringy thing to do.
I mean, the argument is that it's all shot in such a way where, like, you're obviously not supposed to be titillated. And I don't know if I can make that argument about the movie. I do think it's cool, though, that they found somebody who also had a mom that was a Hollywood star.
To keep it true to life?
Yeah.
Another
so,
exploitative mom?
She could pull from that place.
Mm-hmm. Mike.
Yeah, mine was Greg's. When I found that out, especially that some places really do, they're like, and for some reason 18 months passed and then they did reshoots. Nobody says sure why. I was like, I'm sure why, and it's disgusting. Like, it's weird that any of the critics would be like, who knows this mystery?
That is trying to package something as a 16-year-old body. I mean, it is gross.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the cringiest, especially because that's when I was like, wait, I know Melanie Griffith was his kid when she made this. What the fuck is going on? And looked it up and read all of that.
She looks like a kid. She looks like a kid. A very pretty Melanie Griffith looking kid, but a kid nonetheless. Evan.
And like Mike said earlier, there's so many ways to make girls look older, and they just did not do any of them. To the movie's credit,
yeah,
I think that's
that was
what
part of
makes
the
it.
point. But
and like, imagine if in that same scene where she's swimming naked for whatever reason, she's just wearing a bikini. Can't you achieve the same thing where you're like, if the point seems to be don't sexualize her body, then it feels like you could make that without actually.
You show it like in shadow because it's night. She throws the bikini bottom off. She jumps in, and they're looking down, but we never have to see it until we see the dead body or something. Like I'm not even a director, and I came up with that like that.
Yeah,
Arthur.
that's a whole new idea, just poof, out of the air. Evan.
Kate, what?
Oh, yes, right?
Nothing.
Evan, you have an opinion.
I do. For me, it's the scene where we're first introduced to his wife, and this is the Harry Moseby character. We're first introduced to his wife, and she's like on the phone, and he's like, like going up behind her to like surprise her, and then he like covers her eyes, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cute. Then he starts reaching down her shirt, and I'm like, oh no, that's very much less cute.
Yeah.
Don't
Took a turn
at
and
work.
don't ever do that, please. Even if I knew who like the person was, like instinctually, I would still, if someone starts reaching down my shirt, I would instinctively do like one of those moves, like one of those wrestling moves where you I do like a suplex or something.
Throw him over the shoulder.
Exactly. I throw him over my shoulder. Like, nah.
I think Greg and Mike just are right? Like, it just is the 16, 18-year-old thing. But well, good runners up, I think. I'm interested in what you guys think the director's signature was and where we saw it. Let's go back. Let's Snake. Evan, how are you?
I think the main thing that I noticed was he shot a lot of scenes at night. Night moves, get it?
Moves.
Night movie.
Yeah, he shot a lot of scenes at night with very like, I think he had like minimal lighting to kind of like light the scenes up, so just like everything looked very dark. You couldn't really see shit, which I think was kind of like the point. There's just
Harry
like
Moseby is always in the dark. Like,
yeah,
I do get that point for
literally
sure.
and
Night
figuratively.
moves.
What?
Nice.
But yeah, I think that's, for me, that was the signature. Just like shooting scenes in the dark and lots of harsh shadows.
Yeah, that's very neo-noir. Greg,
Do you know what my favorite neo-noir is?
what is your favorite neo-noir, Ryan?
The Matrix.
Yeah, I thought of that
Get it?
earlier as well.
Is The
and
Matrix
chose
a
not
neo-noir
to say it. What about you, Greg?
Oh, director moment. So this is, to me, ultimately a very nihilistic text, and that's kind of the way I feel about Bonnie and Clyde as well. And so just that final image,
Motherfucker, Greg always goes
of
right
the
before me.
Oh,
boat
really?
spinning in a circle, literally going nowhere, and Moseby has, by solving this case, or as he says, I did not solve it, it just sort of crashed in on me. Like, he's ruined everything, and the boat is just going around in a circle in the open water. And
Everyone's
we just get
dead.
yeah, exactly. And we just get that slow, like, zoom out. To me, that was definitely the moment.
And we didn't even, like, in typical 75 fashion, we didn't even get to see him, like, pedaling to the shore after they just killed the
No.
shark.
Quipping.
He just sits on that boat.
It's
Oh,
interesting.
he
Yeah,
dies.
like, I mean,
Head
when you
cannon,
think of
he's
it-
dead.
it's hard not to think of it in Jaws and think of what a difference that is between, two guys making their way back to shore versus one guy just in a death boat going in a circle.
Yeah.
Because Jaws is about finding someone else. And
Right.
in Night Moves, you literally
can't.
cannot.
You're
it's
all
impossible.
floating in your own boat.
Oh.
And maybe that someone else is another guy. Moseby, have you ever thought of that? That's what they did in Jaws.
Mike, it sounded like
Yeah.
Greg stole your answer.
I'm not going to say stole. I'm going to say he hacked in my Google Docs and read my notes and
Yeah.
decided that's what he should do.
Night moved it away from you.
But yeah, I think so. In this, the boat is spinning, and then the director's like, just think. I think that part is obvious, but I think it's supposed to be because the rest of the movie is pretty obtuse. So it's just like, put it together, what I'm saying. And I think same thing. Bonnie and Clyde ends with like that is silent except for I think some music, and then you just see them bloodily, and the camera's like spinning around them while they die. And I think that the point is the same thing as like, just think about what I'm saying. You thought I was saying they might be heroes, but now think about the movie. So I think he really likes at the end be like, I don't want to say throughout the movie what it's about, but I'm going to fucking make you think about it before the credits hit.
Ryan, do you agree with the majority?
No, of course not. And I mean, he does say what the movie's about the whole movie. I mean, that chess scene that we were talking about where, pawns, that's what chess games start with because they come right at you. But we can't handle a knight where it comes at you from the side. What are these?
Knight
Night moves? Like, yeah, it's all
Pawns
there.
come at you pretty fast.
You might be wondering. But no, I'm gonna do. I want to do the editing and the scene overlapping, but to me, that's not really as much Arthur Penn as it is just like the style of the time that he was trying to emulate. For me, based on this trilogy, it is you guys don't know shit about your hero worship, and I think that this was. I think that Moseby comes out as a better person maybe than Clyde Barrow or all of the Western people that we meet in Little Big Man. But ultimately, like, these guys are not, if they're not heroic, then they're definitely not smart. They're definitely not as perfect as we think we are. I think that
you know who he is? He's Ned Stark. Like, yeah, you were honorable and upright the entire time, but in this world, what happens is the same thing that happens to everybody else, which is that it just all goes to shit.
Right. And some of it's your fault and some of it's not, but you have to deal with that. And that's just like our lives. Instead of watching these people who like have this ability to kick the butt of a shotgun that's on the ground, catch it perfectly and blow away the bad guys, like actually what we do is we just fall down. Like sometimes Moseby will be getting out of the car and he'll hit his head on the roof of the car.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck. That's not what we see in normal movies,
Crab
Yeah.
apples.
So that's, I think, the penniest thing about this movie.
And that kind of reminds me of the Safdie brothers and the way that they do neo-noir. It's very like, or Dog Day Afternoon, this like dogged, like dogged day of afternoon, right?
But like, and there's like, the other thing too is that there's repercussions for your idiocy, like most of the characters in these movies just fly through perfection. And characters in these revisionist movies, like they have to deal with all of the stupid stuff that they do. So that's what my pick is.
I like that pick. I'm going to sit on this one. I don't know. I don't actually give points to this one, so it doesn't matter.
Just to
No.
me.
Yeah, just to Greg. Only to Greg. And for that reason, no, actually, Greg's been going first. Mike, I want you to have first pick for pound for performance.
I think everybody is. I thought about this a lot because there's the obvious one. Everybody is playing giant cartoonish archetypes, and so it'd be easy to think the main guy who's. Why would I blank out on his name right now?
Gene Hackman.
Gene Hackman, Royal
'Cause you're a hack,
Tenenbaum.
man.
But I'm gonna give it to Paula because I think she also at first blush is doing like I'm doing a noir archetype, but like I think there's a lot of layers through her, and the fact that at the end of the movie, I'm still not sure where she lands morally or what was her plan and what she was just rolling with the whole time. I think is because the actress
Jennifer Warren.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He fucked up not just being like, yeah, let's keep going in the boat. Let's go down to Mexico.
Yeah.
She's such a good
outta here.
actress. She made us think she was bald.
All right, you're right. The beanie. I'm giving it to the beanie.
I still kind of think she's bald. I have to
Just
say.
for her, I just feel like she protests a little much.
Yeah, if this
The lady
if this was
doth
true
protest.
revisionist, she would have ripped off a full wig and then just had a beanie underneath
Yeah.
and shaking it out.
So yeah, I revise your answer to actually be beanie. Is that correct,
Beanie.
Mike? Yes.
Yes.
Evan, what about you? Pound for pound performance.
I also have to give it to Paula. I think that was my pick as well, like coming out of the movie, who made the biggest impression on me and who it was a tie between her and Gene Hackman, because even while Gene Hackman was doing like questionable things, I still thought he was like super likable and like really like charismatic and stuff. But no, yeah, I'm gonna go with Paul as well.
Yeah, she also just looks so 1975 to me, right?
And she definitely looks like a Florida person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Florida 1975. They nailed it.
She's like, I'm convalescing. I'm getting some sun. It's like, yeah, dude, you have been getting some
We
sun.
can see that, yeah.
Ryan, what about you? Pound for pound.
I have to go with the obvious one, Gene Hackman. I can't believe how much of this movie we spend on, and it's like a time and a half through this movie that you spend thinking that like, oh, this is just Humphrey Bogart. This is just, all of those other people from before. And in The Long Goodbye, I think Elliot Gould does something different where he's like, oh, this ain't your typical detective story. This is revisionist almost right away.
Right away,
Like he
yeah.
gives it all up right away. And how Gene Hackman walks this line of like, well, he's got quips. He can, if the moment strikes, he can grab onto a pole and swing around and kick a guy into the water, which is that's pretty Gene Hackman.
He's got that on tap.
But he still can't. He's still like when it's an emotional moment, he'll break into his wife's lover's house and sit on the couch, and the wife's lover is like, "What are you doing?" And Gene Hackman will be like, "Man, I don't know. What am I doing? This is crazy." For him to do all of that as like this sort of beacon of masculinity, but also a like Mad Magazine version of masculinity all at the same time, I think was very impressive.
Yeah, that's a strong choice as well. Greg, where are you landing?
We don't see this in movies anymore, but in like the 70s and 80s, the credit card to get the door open, that was like in every single movie. Like anytime you had to get into a room, it was just like, just use your credit card and get the door. I'm also going to give it to Gene Hackman, who does that move along with many other night moves in this movie.
God.
It seems like more than anything else, it's an examination of this character of Harry Moseby, and I think Hackman brings a lot of depth to it and a lot of interest there.
Yeah.
It's like the whole time he's just wearing this like just this armor, he's a knight, and this movie is his night moves.
Yes,
this frizzy brown armor.
I also want a special shout out, Kate, though, to Anthony Costello, who played Marv Ellman, who, when you say that quickly, is Marvel Man.
Fun.
The tall guy in the bar who could just say anything that would make you fucking your skin crawl, and then he would just go, and oh my God, was I glad that was the guy whose eyes were getting eaten by fish.
Yeah. I had an idea for my character. I was assuming, what if my character, every time he said something, sort of went like, that'll be my, sort of like an American feel to that, right?
Sort of like half man, half donkey, yes?
Okay, I'm going with Gene Hackman, but I appreciate that shout out profoundly. When we come back, we'll do our final thoughts and maybe some plugs. Okay, I feel like we've actually come pretty close to an opinion. I think it's about time to at least see what we're cooking with. Ryan, you still like this movie? You like it more?
Like this movie.
It less?
Some of those awards made me hate it, but no, it turns out that I actually like it. I do like, for the people who are still a little on the fence, I know it's a big ask to say, hey, this movie that you just watched a couple days ago, watch it again. But hopefully that this podcast, like being on the podcast, at least struck the mood for you of like, you know what, I would watch that again. And I think it'll be an entirely different movie with a lot of the same problems, like there is a lot of 75 badness as far as how some characters are treated. There are some structure problems. There are some storytelling problems. But I think that giving this movie another chance will make you ask yourself, is this bad? Like, is this decision bad? Or was this on purpose to make a greater point about storytelling and dudes? And I know the two things that we're most tired of hearing about are stories and dudes. But I do think, I don't know if this is a big regret that it's not on the bracket, that it's not one of the Elite Eight, but I'm pretty close, dude. I think this movie is good.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't on the bracket, but, if it were. Greg, how do you think it would fare?
I don't think it would be like a slam dunk. I don't think that it would necessarily be picked to win, nor would it be bounced right away. But I think I liked the movie, and I liked talking about it. It's interesting. There's a lot there. There's a lot to sort of think about, and I like the way you can't quite totally wrap your arms around it. I don't think ultimately you can say definitively what happens or what characters' motivations are, and there's something pleasing about that. There's still a lot about it that makes me cringe, and I don't know if I am enamored of the movie, but I'm glad I watched it a couple times, and I'm glad I got a chance to figure out what it was all about, because it did offer a lot.
Also, Kate, real quick, it is eligible for Moody Awards, and I think that Gene Hackman is right in there. And we also have Best Musical Moment, and when Tom sees that his stepdaughter has been freaked out, is going to have nightmares, has gone through a traumatic experience, but Paula turns on the radio and starts dancing, Tom also dancing with her. Mm-hmm. The two of them in that room, that's got to be one of the best musical moments, right?
Yeah. I mean, they're absolutely very charming scene. Mike, what do you think?
Noir is just so up my butt. Like, I love it. And then the whole time I was like, I think this movie might be boring, but I'm loving it. So I do like having this conversation because it opened it up because there was stuff going on. And I do love the ending where I love it as part of the genre, but so many noirs ended like, and it was all connected and this means this. And you're like, oh, I didn't see it. And this one they did it and I went, what? And that's that's the point I really like, is because they're like, well, we're going to play with the genre pieces, but we're also going to be like, see how that's kind of dumb? Like, we don't care. You don't care. Let's move on. That's not what the movie's about.
There's not even that, like, police station scene at the end of Usual Suspects where he connects it all through, like, a clip show. Because those clips aren't there. Harry didn't see that, so we can't piece it together.
It's still just like, so the statues, like I will be muttering about that to myself, like what their actual plan was forever. I'm like, why are they jumping from one coast to the other? Why do you?
They're gonna sell that art, man.
And so often movies that are like, you're not supposed to get it, I feel like they think they're smarter than me. And this one's like, I don't know, I might be dumber. We're all just having fun making a movie here. Let's think about some stuff. And I like that.
Evan, I know that you're not a part of the actual final bracket in the same way that I'm not, but has your opinion of the film changed at all over the past hour?
No, not really. I still, I feel the same way about it that I did at the beginning. I liked it for all the things it was trying to say about the genre. I personally would not watch it again. I would, however, I would like to show it to my friend who is also a director, just to like see what he thinks. But I think that's the only context in which I would watch it again, is to show it to somebody else to see what they think.
Yeah. Do you think that it's worth showing someone else?
It's worth showing to people who will have something to say about it.
I agree with that. I think I don't think
really
this is
fair.
like a movie that you can just give to anybody, you know? Like
No, like I wouldn't give this to like I said I would only show this to my friend who's like, I know he's a director and I know he does like movie stuff for a living, but to one of just like my other friends, we'd probably just be like cringing at the 70s-ness of it all, and the women not wearing bras for some reason.
That's the thing, is that The Long Goodbye and Chinatown and Night Moves were all marketed as, you know, just regular old detective movies, just mysteries, psychological thrillers, and really Chinatown is the only one that succeeds on that level. The other two, like, if you're not a movie person, like, I think that they're gonna be boring. You know, they're gonna be weird and boring, and they're not gonna work.
Yeah. True of so many movies.
True.
They fare better in a movie lover's hands.
Like Ace Ventura: Pet Detective.
Yes, truly, for those who know. Before we head out, Evan, we'd love to hear what you're working on, and if you have anything you'd like to plug.
Oh, yes, I have my own podcast that I do. It's called They Were Good Friends, and you can find it on Spotify, and it's just me and my friend West talking about queer stuff in media. I'm editing episode 4 right now, and we just talk about Steven Universe, which is a cartoon that started when I was in high school, and debating whether it's like actually good representation or not, especially for a kids show.
Oh, cool. I love Steven Universe. I'll be honest, I hope
too.
they get a good grade. I hope they get a good grade.
Yes. Spoiler, it does.
Okay. PopFilter family. Tell us a little bit about what we need to know.
We've had all our annoying commercials in here. But
No,
we
I
a lot
have a new annoying commercial.
Oh, okay, great.
Our newest show is called Doing Bits, a Love Island podcast. My wife and I are going week by week, 6 episodes of Love Island a week, and breaking it down.
Oh, that's very fun.
People love that show. That's
I can hear the theme music in my head.
Yeah.
Already.
And
Love
Shady
Island
Monk gave us
rules.
a dope theme song that's I'm not going to say a ripoff because he's a good musician, but an ode to the Love Island theme song.
Yes. Oh, I love it.
I think this is soon to be our most popular show.
That's all.
I'm going to be totally fine with that, Greg.
Yeah, that's going to be very challenging.
I love that. I'm very excited to consume it. My podcast is called Movies I'd Like to Fix. I co-host it with our dear friend Tompkins. And we go season by season, mini genre by niche subgenre, and pick the best of each of these subgenres.
And you
see
guys
what they do right, see what they don't.
Take the best parts of each of them and make your own. I just listened to the season finale, and it I'd say it's worth a listen, friends. It is.
Would you?
Bullshit. Yeah, it's fucking bonkers.
Would that
That
be
movie has
revisionist for
everything
revisionist?
in it. We talk about movies for a living, Kate, and it sounds like the movie that you and Tom put together is going to be the blockbuster of all blockbusters.
Yeah, we're excited to get it in development. It's kind of stalled at the moment, but
How
any-
fortunate.
What I like
we'll
is
see.
you
It's
guys
in between production houses.
script notes. They like lord over like, oh, we're experts, and here's how you do it. With you guys, you talk about them and then very subtly break down the 11 rules of screenwriting, and I did appreciate that.
Yes, thank you very much. You'll find along the way actually a lot for you to be able to learn for yourself, and that's wonderful. It's I love my podcast, and I think you will too. Movies I'd Like to Fix. And on that note, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you for the next 1975 movie. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye.